Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Angela and I'm an angelic Arcturian. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. And today we are going to talk about the nature of unconditional love by understanding darkness and demons and how they are divine as well as everything else in the universe. So if this message resonates with you, please like the video. It helps me to get my content in the YouTube algorithm, which can be really tough to get through. And it helps get my video to more people to get this message. As always, the opinions that I share in this video are just perspectives and you can take them or leave them. So with that being said, let's get into it. So if you haven't seen my video on understanding third dimensional consciousness, you may want to take a look at that first because it kind of gives you a perspective on duality and separation and contrast and how the third dimension works. And the third dimension is essentially a dimension of fear and separation, illusion and duality. And it's a place that we come to experience ourselves as separate and where we have these contrasting experiences that really help to evolve our consciousness. So, in order to get a higher perspective on the third dimension and to understand unconditional love, it's really important that we understand the nature of darkness or demons. Darkness in general is dark energy. Demons I refer to as people that inhabit dark energy in the physical or the non-physical form. So, it's basically a being of dark energy. But it's important to understand that everything falls under the umbrella of the divine. And this means that we are all fractals of the God source, and we choose to experience ourselves as either negative or positive vibrations in the third dimension. And just because a soul chooses to experience itself as a negative vibration does not make that soul any less divine. In fact, most souls who choose to experience themselves as a negative vibration do so in order to catalyze and polarize other beings and create contrast in the matrix. So without darkness, we have no duality. So who's going to take those dark roles? Divine beings take those dark roles because there is much to learn from darkness and from experiencing ourselves as darkness as well as light. And most of us experience ourselves as both throughout our journey through the matrix. And we need to understand that we experience many, many lifetimes through our ascension process, through the third dimension. And throughout those lives, we experience ourselves as both darkness and light. So when we are judging someone or something as darkness, that may be true in a third dimensional consciousness. But when we begin to raise our consciousness and get bigger perspectives of things, we are able to understand that everything is divine. It's all divine, it's all love, it's all light. So even if I chose to experience myself as a demon or darkness on the third dimension, that doesn't make me any less divine when I exit the third dimensional consciousness. When I leave third dimensional consciousness, I will ascend back to the God source where I will once again be divine love and light. So when we are experiencing demons and darkness in the third dimension, we have to understand that all darkness is still light and it's still divine. And once we are able to understand this, we are able to understand and cultivate unconditional love for all beings and for darkness and light. And that's what unconditional love is essentially about. It's loving everything and everyone and understanding that it's all God. It's all divine light. It's all love, and it's all for the purpose of evolution. So those of you that know me and have been following me for a while, a lot of you know that I have had a lot of experiences with narcissists. And in my experience with narcissists, I've experienced basically demons incarnate, because a narcissist is a very dark energy and a very dark vibration. And so whenever we come into contact with that sort of negative energy, that negative energy really polarizes us and catalyzes us and creates conscious growth and evolution. So if I hadn't had my experiences with the narcissist, it wouldn't have polarized me and catalyzed me to reach higher levels of consciousness and awakening. So for me in my journey, the narcissist was an absolutely necessary part of that. And through that experience with the narcissist, I was able to experience extreme duality between my own darkness, my own light, as well as my light self experiencing the narcissist and the dark energy. So it created a lot of polarization and catalyzation for my own spiritual growth. And so this plays out in many ways on the third dimension. And you have to understand that if I'm a lower level consciousness and I want to evolve my consciousness, then I'm going to choose a lifetime or 20 or 50 or 100 in the third dimensional consciousness, experiencing suffering, duality, and separation, as well as fear. But without all of those things, then it's pointless to even try to evolve my consciousness here, because there is no contrast and there's nothing to polarize and catalyze me to grow. So we come here to experience this. And if I'm this lower level consciousness and I want to evolve myself in this way, then I need another soul who's going to play out that darker vibration or that lower vibration in order to give me that contrasting experience. So when we're on the other side of the veil, some of our closest soul family, like for me it was the narcissist, they are part of my soul tribe. I'm very, very close to them and connected to them on the other side, and they are just as beautiful and divine as any being. But I asked them personally, would you play this darker role for me? And these were beings that already wanted to experience themselves as darkness, as a negative vibration, as a polarizer. So we made a soul contract to do that in this reality. So throughout the experience, these several narcissists that I did deal with played out these soul contracts with me in order to evolve both of us. And so when somebody is experiencing themselves as darkness, they are learning so much from being darkness. Just as we learn so much from being more light-oriented, people that want to experience themselves as darkness learn a lot from being dark-oriented. And it does not make the darker entity any less divine. So I just really want to reiterate that, because it's really important. And once we understand that, then we're able to remove the judgment of your good or your bad, and that pulls us out of separation and out of duality. So darker beings are still divine. They have soul contracts to be a lower level consciousness and a low vibrating entity, and they do this to help us grow and evolve, and they do this to help themselves grow and evolve. So there are many ways that we can experience ourselves in the third dimension, and many of us experience ourselves as both light and dark. So when you're in the duality matrix, and when you are faced with darkness, demons, fear, separation, and all of those things that we experience here, it's important to be able to understand that it's all still divine. It all falls under the umbrella of divine love and consciousness. And once we die and we leave this third dimensional consciousness, we go right back to perfect love, perfect light, no fear, no duality. Everything is wonderful, and we are back in the God source vibration once again. So it's not uncommon for many different souls to create these contracts with each other and to experience this duality and this demonic experience with another being, whether physical or non-physical form, because just as light beings can be physical and non-physical, dark beings are physical and non-physical as well. So when we look at the bigger picture and what's playing out here on the third dimension, we can say, oh, the deep state, they're so dark, they're so demonic. And yes, they are. I mean, you don't want to go hug a demon and make it your bestie, but it's important to understand that this demon is on a soul level an extremely divine being, just as you are and just as I am. So when we're looking at the deep state through the lens of duality, then it's easy to judge them, and they're so demonic, they're so bad, they cause so much pain and suffering. Yes, they do, but they do that to polarize you, to create change. And look what's happening. Through this darkness that's playing out in this third dimension by this deep state demonic group of entities or aliens or whatever you want to call them, they are creating a lot of contrasting energy here that's really pushing humanity to evolve, because when humanity suffers enough, they evolve. So they're here to create that suffering, and they're actually doing us a favor. So if you really want to reach higher levels of consciousness and even enlightenment, part of that process is taking away judgment, anger, resentment, all of the negative feelings that darkness can pull up in us, and being able to see it through a different lens, and that is the lens of divine love and light. And that means that, yes, while things are playing out in this way on the third dimension, and they're very real, and they can be very scary, and they can create a lot of suffering, as soon as we exit the third dimensional consciousness, we are back with that same narcissist or demon that terrorized me in the third dimension, is somebody who's very beautiful and divine, and maybe even angelic on the other side. So it could be my very best friend. My worst narcissistic enemy on the third dimension is my very best friend on the other side. So when you understand that, and you can get that perspective of how these things play out in this illusory experience, then you can understand that it's all divine. It's all divine, it's all perfect, it's all love. And that is essentially what enlightenment is all about, is being able to see it in that way and get those higher perspectives and understand it from a higher level of consciousness. And when we reach these higher levels of consciousness, we are able to express more unconditional love towards our fellow beings, whether they represent as a dark energy or light energy. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys and kind of help you get that perspective on it, so that we can help remove some of the fear, some of the hatred, some of the anger, and some of the polarity that we are trying to ascend as a human consciousness at this time. And part of that process is understanding. When we understand how the matrix plays out, when we understand third dimensional consciousness, when we're able to get higher perspectives of third dimensional consciousness and see it from above, then it's a lot easier to remove those negative emotions that we can feel towards darkness, and begin to bring in and cultivate more love, acceptance, and unconditional love for these beings, for this experience, and to really get a better understanding of this consciousness and why we experience it the way that we do. So next time you're faced with a negative entity, a negative vibration, try not to see it as something that's out to victimize you, but more so something that's out to polarize you, to cause you to have to grow by creating this friction through the experience that you have with them. It forces you to grow, and it forces you to evolve your consciousness. So darkness is actually doing us all a favor, and when we can see it through that lens, we can actually develop gratitude and unconditional love towards darkness. And when we reach that vibration, then we are even closer to divinity and higher consciousness than we were before. So this is part of conscious evolution. This is part of higher consciousness learning. And this is part of our soul's growth. It's all beautiful. It's all divine. It's all God. Even demons, even darkness, even suffering, even pain, even duality. So anyways, guys, I hope that made sense. If it didn't, leave me a message in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.